Welcome everyone to this first module of Introduction to Environmental Management System. I want you to picture this course as a long walk through the natural world, where we not only observe the scenery but also pause to talk about the systems that make it all work, the biological, the chemical, the social, and the economic. And importantly, we'll explore how humans, with all our ingenuity and sometimes carelessness, fit into this puzzle. An environmental management system, in essence, is our organized way of making sure we interact with the environment responsibly. It's a structured approach, much like how a business has rules and systems to run smoothly. EMS is a set of tools, processes, and strategies to ensure we take care of the planet while meeting human needs. But before we can even talk about management, we have to truly understand what we are managing, and that means exploring the science, the people, the politics, and the natural systems. So, let's start at the very beginning. Science and the environment. 1. Science and the environment. Science is essentially our method of understanding the world. It is observation, experimentation, and analysis, a process that aims to minimize bias and guesswork so that what we know is reliable and testable. Environmental science, specifically, is the branch of science that studies the interaction between the physical, chemical, and biological components of nature, and how humans influence and are influenced by those systems. Think about this: every breath you take, every bite of food you eat, and every sip of water you drink is connected to the environment. Science gives us the tools to trace those connections, understand the systems behind them, and predict what might happen if we change something, whether intentionally or by accident. Environmental science draws on multiple disciplines: biology, chemistry, physics, geology, geography, meteorology, ecology, sociology, economics, and even political science. Why so many? Because the environment is not a single, isolated entity, it's a network of interdependent parts. If we change one, others respond, sometimes in unexpected ways. For example, if an industrial area releases pollutants into a river, the chemistry of the water changes. That chemical change can harm fish, which affects the food web, which can reduce the livelihood of fishing communities, which in turn can impact local economies and even political stability. This is why environmental management systems rely heavily on scientific research, not as an abstract pursuit of knowledge, but as a practical tool for decision-making. 2. Economics, politics, and public policy. Now, science gives us the facts, but economics, politics, and public policy determine what we do with those facts. You might think environmental decisions should be made purely on the basis of scientific evidence, but in reality, human values, financial considerations, and political priorities are often just as influential, sometimes more so. Economics is the study of how we use resources. Resources are finite, but human wants are infinite. This creates a constant tension: how do we meet needs without exhausting what we depend on? Economists talk about things like opportunity cost. If you use land for farming, you can't use it for a forest preserve. There's always a trade-off. Environmental economics focuses on putting a value on environmental goods and services, things like clean air, healthy soil, biodiversity, so they are considered in decision-making, not treated as free and therefore expendable. Politics comes into play because environmental issues often cross borders and involve multiple stakeholders. Who has the right to water from a river that flows through 3 countries? Who decides whether a forest can be logged or preserved? Political systems create the platforms for negotiating these questions, but they can also create barriers when short-term political gains overshadow long-term sustainability. Public policy is where science, economics, and politics converge. A good environmental policy takes scientific findings, considers the economic implications, and passes through the political process to become laws, regulations, or programs. A weak policy might ignore scientific warnings, underestimate long-term economic costs, or be shaped primarily by lobbying interest. A real-world example: regulations to reduce vehicle emissions are based on scientific evidence about air pollution and health impacts, balanced against economic considerations of cost to manufacturers and consumers, and shaped by political willingness to enforce them. Without strong public policy, environmental management becomes voluntary, and history shows that voluntary measures often fall short. 3. Basic needs of living things. Every living organism, whether a towering oak tree, a tiny bacterium, or a human being, has basic needs for survival. Understanding these needs is crucial because environmental management at its core is about ensuring these needs are met in a sustainable way. The most fundamental needs are energy. All living things require energy to maintain life processes. Plants get it from sunlight through photosynthesis. Animals get it from consuming plants or other animals. Water, essential for chemical reactions within cells and for maintaining structure in plants and animals. Air, specifically, oxygen for most living things and carbon dioxide for plants. Habitat, a physical space that provides shelter and the right conditions for survival. Nutrients, elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and trace minerals that support growth and repair. When we disrupt these needs, for example, by polluting water sources, fragmenting habitats, or depleting soil nutrients, we affect the survival of species. An environmental management system monitors these basic needs across ecosystems and works to minimize human-caused disruptions. 4. Populations and communities. A population is a group of individuals of the same species living in a particular area. A community is all the populations of different species that live and interact in a particular area. Populations grow or shrink based on birth rates, death rates, immigration, and emigration. They are influenced by environmental factors such as food availability, predation, disease, and habitat conditions. Communities, on the other hand, are shaped by the interactions between different populations, competition, predation, symbiosis, and mutualism. From a management perspective, understanding population dynamics is key to preventing problems like overpopulation of pests or depletion of endangered species. For example, overfishing can cause a collapse of a fish population, which not only affects the fish but also the predators that rely on them and the human communities dependent on fishing for food and income. 5. Energy, patterns, and disturbance. Energy in ecosystems flows from the sun to producers, plants, to consumers, herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and finally to decomposers, fungi, bacteria. This flow is not 100% efficient. Energy is lost as heat at each step. This is why ecosystems have more plants than herbivores, and more herbivores than carnivores. Patterns in ecosystems can be stable for long periods, but disturbances, both natural and human-caused, can alter them dramatically. Natural disturbances include storms, wildfires, floods, and volcanic eruptions. Human disturbances include deforestation, pollution, and climate change. Some disturbances can actually increase biodiversity by creating new habitats, but frequent or severe disturbances often reduce ecosystem health. An environmental management system needs to balance allowing natural disturbances, like occasional fires that renew forest growth, with preventing or mitigating harmful human-induced disturbances. 6. Wild species and biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life in all its forms, genetic diversity within species, species diversity within communities, and ecosystem diversity across the planet. High biodiversity usually indicates a healthy, resilient system that can adapt to changes and recover from disturbances. Wild species are valuable not just for their ecological roles but also for economic, cultural, and aesthetic reasons. They provide food, medicines, and raw materials. They contribute to ecosystem services like pollination and pest control, and they enrich human culture and recreation. Threats to biodiversity include habitat loss, overexploitation, pollution, invasive species, and climate change. Managing biodiversity requires protecting habitats, regulating hunting and harvesting, controlling invasive species, and sometimes restoring populations through breeding programs or habitat rehabilitation. 7. The use and restoration of ecosystems. Humans use ecosystems for food, water, timber, recreation, and more. Sometimes this use is sustainable, for example, harvesting timber at a rate that allows the forest to regenerate, and sometimes it's not, leading to degradation. Restoration ecology is the science of repairing damaged ecosystems. This might involve replanting native vegetation, removing pollutants, reintroducing species, or reshaping landscapes to restore natural water flow. Restoration is often more expensive and difficult than preventing damage in the first place, which is why environmental management emphasizes prevention. 8. The human population. Humans are a biological species like any other, but we have an outsized impact because of our numbers, technology, and consumption patterns. Global population growth has accelerated dramatically in the past few centuries, from about 1 billion in the early 1800s to over 8 billion today. Population growth puts pressure on natural resources, water, land, energy, and increases waste and pollution. However, it's not just the number of people that matters, but also their consumption patterns. A small population with high per capita consumption can have as much impact as a large population with low consumption. Environmental management systems consider population trends when planning for sustainable resource use. This involves not only population control measures in some cases, but also education, technology transfer, and changes in consumption patterns.